So we've heard many different points of view talking about the history of Rinascita and the Sentinel Imperator. We've heard the Imperator talk directly with Rover twice, we've watched the mural story, we've spoken with Lorelei, and we've spoken with Primus Fenrico. Although Rover is uncertain whether Fenrico is telling the truth, these stories provide different parts to the bigger picture rather than different views of the same story. Throughout this video there are 10 redemption codes providing 30 astride, some level materials, shell credits, and consumables. These are a special thanks to Kuro Games for providing these codes, and there will be more available in future uploads. So because there is so much to unpack, the best way to show all the information is to create a timeline. First half of this video we'll be creating the timeline with all the surface level information from our different storytellers, and the second half will be filling all the information beneath the surface hidden between the lines, and this will be the juicier part of the video. To be clear, this timeline is creating the order in which these historic events take place, not the order in which we learn about it. And this will allow you to just cover what is said in 2.0 and avoid any details that may be revealed in future patches. So this is a spoiler warning for the second half information, and don't worry, we stay leak free. Alright, let's begin. The first story came from a vision Rover experiences while being attacked by the Veteran dancers under Frelova's control. Frelova's control ceases and the Imperator directly speaks to Rover.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
The first scene shows two divinities, a unicorn and a leviathan, and Cartathea, a resonator. 4 words are ushered out.
Command, unify, ascend, converge.
These 4 words highlight the main theme of this big story. The Imperator then formulates an actual sentence asking for Rover's aid in returning the lost to the earthly realm.
Aid me, O Arbiter, that we may return the lost unto the earthly realm.
2 things to note about this is that we do not immediately assume this is the Imperator talking, and we do not know if the lost refers to Cartathea and the Seraphim, or if it includes the group of people rounded up by this glowing rope. We can also see a feather, which is an indication of the Seraphim, and the same glowing power through Cartathea's chest, meaning this group of people and Cartathea are affected by the same power. The next story is from the murals that are closed to the public, which have been restored, and this provides us with most of the information about Rinascita's history. We begin with 2 divinities at war, the divinity of the sea and the divinity of the sky. When referring to a divinity, we are talking about the entity shown and their related principles, beliefs, or creeds. We'll call these entities divine beasts. The war between the sea and sky divinities was due to conflicting beliefs. One of the divinities is represented as a leviathan with a tacit core, signifying this may be a Thrunodian. The other divinity is the unicorn that does not have a fish-like tail but 4 hooves instead. During this war, both divine beasts were weakened and began to bleed. We are not sure if this is physical bleeding or a metaphor for losing their divine power. Regardless, the war between the 2 divinities came to an end by the TD outbreak known as the Dark Tide. This occurred 20 years ago. According to both the late Napoli and Primus Fenrico, the Dark Tide's essence was from the blood or lost frequencies of the divinities. We can prove this is true from the mural itself. When the scene changes to the 2 divine beasts circulating, the background here is deep blue. If you pay very close attention to the sound, you'll hear the sound of a whale. Not that whale, an actual whale. This signifies the divinities relate to the deep ocean, hinting where the beliefs of the Order of the Deep tie in. The same blue background is consumed by a dark tide before being dispelled by Primus Napoli. The second proof that the dark tide originated from the beast's divine blood is the blood shown during the mural story. The 2 divine beasts then become one or unify, becoming unicorn with a leviathan tail or a hippocampus. This hippocampus is implied to be the one divinity that Primus Napoli, the founder of the Order of the Deep, went to be with. So altogether, we have this divinity in the deep, which is the foundation of the Order of the Deep's creed, and we've seen from Black Shores that this horse has hoof prints going into water and a building underwater with a green symbol at the top. This next part is where there is plenty beneath the surface where we don't know what happened yet. We see the new unified divinity in what we call the deep. The mural story says that this divinity hath chosen their herald, who is the maiden that became the enlightened one.
The shattered divinity hath chosen their herald.
the enlightened one being the Sentinel Imperator's resonator. Enrico claims that Cartathea once again resonated with this divinity to martyr herself and seal the calamity known as the Dark Tide. We don't know if this means Cartathea had a second resonance awakening or if she gave her powers back to the divinity in order to aid its recovery. We know that Cartathea is a martyr, which means she sacrificed herself for a divinity. We've seen that Cartathea is ensnared with a seraphim during the first message from the Imperator. We also know Cartathea resonates with Threnodian power because of Rover's eyes showing the golden halos. If Cartathea had a second resonance with both the Unicorn and Leviathan power each, that would indicate she may have a second form, thus donning the name Cartathea and Fleur de Lis. However, we also know that after resonating again and sealing the Dark Tide, the divinity of the Order of the Deep was able to return to its true form and restore its lost divine power.
Then, the divinity shall return to its true form.
This does mean that to restore or recover, Cartathea had to have given her power back to the divine beast. So what really happened? This is a grey area we will try to solve with the second part. After Cartathea Fleur de Lis's sacrifice, Primus Fenrico states that he became the new enlightened one. However, we do not know if this is true or not. Perhaps he may be the enlightened one or chosen one without the power of the Sentinel, because the Sentinel never truly got his power back from Cartathea to give it to the next person. Or perhaps the Sentinel received another power than its own and therefore cannot resonate with Fenrico. Again, this is a grey area we'll try to connect the dots in the second half. The last time the Regonesi heard from the Sentinel Imperator is from the laureate of the Last Carnival that occurred 10 years prior to the events of version 2.0. The final bit is also a bit of a grey area, and that is the appearance of the Sentinel Imperator. After becoming one divinity around the time of the Dark Tide, the appearance of the divinity was a combination of a unicorn and leviathan. There are no wings or feathers. The divinity shown present day by the Order of the Deep includes wings and a tacit core on its chest. The wings, which would indicate the seraphim we've seen, which means that the one divinity here also needed to unify with the seraphim, or the seraphim's power, which led to it being ensnared. The only time we see the seraphim present day is with the yellow symbol at the top of these three symbols, and the wings when we're looking at the vault building. The green has been shown with the horse or unicorn, and the blue we assume with the deep ocean or the original Leviathan, thus implying there are three divinities, possibly of the sea, sky, and the earth, which is an accurate representation of how deities in Greek mythology are portrayed. The male deities control the sky and stars, and the female deities nurture the land and sea. But according to the Black Shores, the Threnodian has been dormant in Rinascita, even though the Threnodian frequencies in other countries have started to fluctuate.
The Threnodian's revival in Jinzhou has triggered similar reactions in other countries, with Rinascita as the one exception.
And according to this undercover Black Shores NPC found at the entrance to the Montelicotta during the night, the Sentinel Imperator shown by the Order of the Deep is strikingly different to the Sentinel Imperator recorded by the Tether system. This leads us to the next message, which is after Rover receives the laurel and communicates with the Imperator. The Imperator says that it is ensnared in an inverted tower beyond the clouds and amongst the stars, watching over Solaris. The fact that the Imperator mentions Solaris and not just Rinascita already brings into question just how powerful the Sentinel Imperator is compared to other Sentinels. The other part that is in question is the fact that we can see an inverted tower in the sky already. One theory I have is that only Rover can see this, but we'll get to that in the second part. There are also clouds that form a well and the night sky in the number sanctum as well. Finally, we have Primus Fenrico giving his point of view, which Rover wonders if it is true or not.
What if the Primus's words were a bunch of baloney?
Fenrico claims that Fleur de Lis was not the real enlightened one and that she was the Threnodian's resonator. There are signs that prove this is true. He also claims to have witnessed what happened to the Dark Tide and the sealing of the calamity. He mentions that Cartathea sacrificed herself or martyred herself for the principles to seal the Dark Tide. This does mean he knows Cartathea's whereabouts. Fenrico also says that the Sentinel Imperator belief is to unify all of the people. To explain this even further, the reason why he enforces these beliefs so strictly and that there is the faithless that go on the pilgrim's sale is because whenever there is that conflict in belief, that is what creates the dark side or enables it to emerge. And this wraps up everything that's on the surface level for the timeline of Rinascita, but the juicier part is the second part of this video. Alright, let's start with the age of 1,000 islands, which was before the dark tide. During this age, the people of Rinascita began to rebuild their homes after it was lost to the lament. They had boarded the ark and traveled to establish what we now know as Ragunna and a city we haven't seen called Septimont. Instead of having just 2 divinities, Rinascita had many tribes, and it was later revealed that it may have initially started with 5 tribes. This is according to the essay of the Regenesi drama. The real-life inspiration for this may be from Rome's 5 good emperors era. These emperors were, as the title suggests, 5 emperors that presided over the glorious days of the Roman Empire. One of those emperors was Hadrian, who we know is a historical figure to Rinascita through Hadrian's gladiator image. This is also the first time the carnival first came into being. Initially, the people of Rinascita used to dress up in masks and costumes to commemorate and communicate with each other and their ancestors. What's important to note here is that the carnival never originated from the Order of the Deep. It was formed by the people of Rinascita, and this ancient carnival allowed Rinascitans the freedom to praise whoever they want, and eventually these differences would fuse and unite under the Sentinel Imperator. The ancient meaning of becoming a laureate was also different from what is known today. Laurel was bestowed upon the person whose ideals aligned most with Rinascita's ideals and resonates with the Sentinel. Therefore, the chosen laureate becomes the enlightened one, the resonator chosen by the Sentinel Imperator. From this, we can develop the understanding that each divine beast possibly had a resonator known as a divine envoy, and the laurel was bestowed upon the resonator most in line with Rinascita's collective will. So do we know of any other divine entities? The answer to this lies with the 3 symbols shown here. The only time we see orange at the top is in relation to the seraphim wings, green seems to be connected to everything with the unicorn, and the blue with the leviathan. The vision Rover has from the Imperator is the first confirmation that a seraphim did or still does exist. If you head to the Cathedral of Mercury or Hermes, reference to the Phoebe video, you'll notice the same 3 pillars next to each other. Outside of the cathedral, you can find the same center pillar with wings around them, but this is not where it ends. If you head to Averado Vaults and fly up from the centric construct, you'll notice the building has the same shape as the pillar with the seraphim, and the lighting in the clouds form the shape of the wings. So perhaps the seraphim was the divinity of the earth or land, making it a 3rd divinity and completing the inspiration from Titamancy in Greco-Roman mythology with deities of the sea, sky and earth. To further back this, the building entrance has a pattern forming 6 wings, and the century construct also has 6 wings. Whenever we see the supposed Sentinel Imperator statue, which is the fusion of the unicorn and leviathan, it is always near a body of water. This serves as proof that this figure shown here relates to the deep ocean. However, these statues also symbolize the lies or indoctrination that the order are imposing. The ancient Rinascitans built their statues out of bronze or copper. In real life, bronze and copper statues, which are expensive, sturdier, and can produce better detail, will form green rust when in contact with seawater or oxidized. So areas with these statues showing green rust indicates roughly when on the timeline they were built and how much exposure they've had to either the dark tide or seawater. A possible indication that the sea level was higher than it is now and would explain the age of 1,000 islands. Then along came the indoctrination by the Order of the Deep, where they have the cheaper marble sculptures, one of them even on a metal stand. Marble structures aren't capable of showing as much detail as a metal sculpture, so they are a bit faster to sculpt, helping the Order of the Deep to cover up whatever they want. I think showing the indoctrination of the Order using historically and scientifically accurate materials is one of the greatest pieces of design in Wuthering Waves so far. So the closer we get to the present day, the more often we see these stone or marble sculptures, even plated with gold. Gold would explain why there is no rust on the tacit marks of the older sculptures, or perhaps it was altered by the Order of the Deep later on as part of their propaganda. Gold does not rust, in case anyone is wondering. Okay, so this next part comes from the essay of the Rinascita drama as well, more so relating to the Golden Bow and Chronicles of Avenolium understanding of the Sentinel. Firstly, the Golden Bow is taking inspiration from a real-life book called The Golden Bow by Sir James Fraser. This book circulates around these studies of mythology, religion, and magic, whereas Wuthering Waves has taken a theatrical adaptation of this. There are some scenes that may represent this Golden Bow in the sense of the laurel. It is a bit difficult to tell with YouTube's bitrate. The Chronicles of Avenolium is the more interesting one. We've translated the mentioning of Avenolium Theology Seminary in a previous video, which we now know is related to the history of Rinascita. But who is Avenolium? Well, there is no direct answer, but Avenolium may be one of the names of the divine beasts that were previously worshipped. Both these dramatic stories mention that the Sentinel Imperator had an oracle. Now this is massive in terms of historical relevance, because in Greco-Roman mythology an oracle, most commonly the Oracle of Delphi, was the middleman of communication between the gods and the people. The titan who once held this responsibility was Phoebe, the same Phoebe that is inspiration for our Phoebe. Our Phoebe goes one step deeper to use a staff, which is an adaptation of the caduceus from Hermes or Mercury, which may be one of the ancient relics that the representatives of the different tribes carried in the Chronicles of Avenolium. So this may indicate that Phoebe is the true enlightened one, or at the very least a divine envoy, and this backs why Phoebe can understand echoes, which are the divine emissaries of the Sentinel Imperator. Well, what does that mean? Because our understanding on a surface level is that there is only one resonator of the Sentinel. This final segment is developed from the Codex and Cristoforo's Blessed Maiden play. The Codex states that the Sentinel Imperator's true form has never been seen. Remember that this Codex has not been written in the present day, so anytime from the date this codex was written to now, the Sentinel Imperator could have revealed their true form. The codex also mentions that the Sentinel Imperator has the ability to split, meaning that the divine entities of Rinascita are parts of the Sentinel Imperator. The word Imperator itself means one above all, so the Sentinel Imperator is the one above all Sentinel. But since Sentinel and Threnodian are opposite sides of the same coin, it's possible that the Imperator can split into Threnodian, which explains how the blood of the Sentinel created the Dark Tide. To overcome this dark tide, Fleur-de-Lis martyred herself. According to Cristoforo, whose story may not be an accurate representation, Fleur-de-Lis never claimed to be the Enlightened One. She was compared to being the Enlightened One by the Acolytes, but just because she's not the Enlightened One doesn't mean she did not resonate with a Sentinel, because she is still mentioned as a divine emissary. During Fleur-de-Lis Cartithia's final moments, she is said to have journeyed eastward to the high heavens in the mist to form a shared bond with them to seal the dark tide. The fact that Fleur-de-Lis never stated Sentinel and immediately used pronouns already suggests Fleur-de-Lis's resonance may have been with the Threnodian. While Fleur-de-Lis was trapped in the abyss for 3 days and 3 nights, she saw a glimmer of light that told her she needed to do this. Now this statement itself has massive real-life connections. In Roman history, mythology was the core of religion until it was replaced with Christianity. In Christianity, 3 days and 3 nights is symbolized in 2 areas: when Jonah entered the whale and when Jesus died, spending 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth, which is understood as the grip of the enemy. Kuro may be taking inspiration from this by combining the two, portraying Fleur-de-Lis as the martyr for Rinascita and spending 3 days and 3 nights in the abyss, which could be within Cetus. During Fleur-de-Lis's final moments within the earthly or mortal realm, Primus or Priest Fenrico at the time was the last person to see her. According to Cristoforo, Fenrico was a priest at the time, not the Primus, stationed in the direction Fleur-de-Lis had to travel. So Primus Fenrico's story and accounts to Rover by the end of 2.0 are in fact true that he was a witness to the final moments of the Dark Tide, but it is clear he has omitted the details of these events that would motivate him to later bring a halt to the carnival 10 years later. Now the question is, Where does Cetus, the inverted tower in the sky, Inohom, and the clouds with the whale come in? Well, since only Rover was able to see the Lost walk briefly amongst the crowd, it is possible that this tower does not exist in the mortal realm of Rinascita. Perhaps only Rover can see this inverted tower. There is an NPC outside Lolo Logistics that mentions a city in the clouds, but this may not be connected to this here in Rinascita. If it is connected to the inverted tower, which isn't exactly a city, then it would prove that not only Rover can see this. What I'm sure all of Rinascita can see is the whale cloud. We know that there was previously a sky and sea divinity, so with there being seraphim and horse or hippocampus statues signifying their respective divinities, there is a possibility of the Leviathan or Cetus being the current divinity of the sky. To explain this, we assume that the Leviathan is Threnodian. The Threnodian became dormant after the unity between the sea and sky divinities, but may have had a primary weapon like Overthrax had the Dreamless. Thus, the theory of Rover's lost frequencies remain accurate, as Cetus and the horse have been around Black Shores. And if you aren't sure about that, then here's the rundown. Rover had all the elements upon entering this timeline of Solaris 3. Upon landing in the Upside Down Sea, Rover released 5 particles of remnant energy. We saw one travel to Overthrax and we later received Havoc, so for Rover to obtain their next power, they would need to retrieve and reabsorb that remnant frequency. The only problem that remains is we also have Ginohom, who is the Dragon of the Dirge. Ginohom is his name, which is the Hebrew name for the Greek Gehenna, which means a place of hell. The Pilgrim Sail is meant to be a journey of absolution for transgressors. Both the Order of the Deep and historical essays state that the Imperator was at the end of the journey of the Pilgrim Sail. So this power of absolution and judgment, or Decustis, has to relate to Rover's remnant frequency that was released. But since there are multiple divinities, it's possible that Rover's remnant frequency has split and has the ability to unite, just like the Imperator is able to split and unite. That was an insane amount of detail to uncover. This is probably my 3rd or 4th iteration of writing the script, because I had to make it cohesive and connect all the dots with information stemming from different sources in-game. This is probably about 50% of Rinascita's details. The other 50% will be covered in shorter videos that are more focused on singular topics. Let me know your thoughts down below, and I will see you in the next video.